Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Cheesehead and the Vikings segment called Homegrown Gridiron, where we try and put a player in focus or a coach in focus. And we've got Josh Gargiulo. He played for the UC Firebirds. He had a pretty good, successful stint at the Stingrays and also, so far, quite a successful stint at the Canberra Centurions down in the ACT Gridiron. Welcome, first of all.
Thank you. Really good to be here.
No, it's all good. Pleasure's all ours. First of all, let's get started. Which NFL team do you follow?
The now Las Vegas, formerly Oakland Raiders.
Okay. And how long have you followed them for? And why did you choose them?
Since I only knew about Gridiron in 2004, so it'd be then, which would be a year or two removed from their Super Bowl loss to Tampa.
Yeah.
And I dare say it was most probably the connection Canberra Raiders, Oakland Raiders.
Yep. Yeah, kind of put two and two together. That's fair enough. Yep.
It could well have also been early Madden games. I can't really.
Yeah, true. And also they were going through a spot of success around the time, even though they'd not won the Super Bowl, they'd made it, sort of thing. So
yeah. I was after the Super Bowl though. I never saw that until years later. But yeah,
and it's still stands.
They were well into the mired terrible performances that they've been putting on ever since by then.
Yes, even to the point where unfortunately they had to relocate, but that's neither here nor there. But let's get started on your journey. And first of all, did it start out as coaching or playing?
Playing. So I started. I went to University of Canberra very briefly after I left school in 2004, and just
as
had
a
random.
Or as a player?
As a student.
Okay.
And had a random friend come up to me and say, "Try Gridiron." I said, "What the hell's Gridiron?" and gave it a crack. I don't actually think, outside of like the Don Lane SBS stuff, I don't actually think I'd ever seen a game of Gridiron before I played.
Oh wow!
Yeah. So
you
I had a couple of
you'd watched, sort of thing.
Quite literally, and I think we were a week or two out from the season, so I only got a couple of trainings in.
Oh wow!
Before I actually played, so so I played a couple of years for the Firebirds.
Did you have any success there while you played for them? Was there any capital?
We made a Capital Bowl the last year I was there, but lost it to the Astros. I think that was the last year of the Astros. And then once I left, UC started their very dominant run that they had for the next sort of 10 to 12 years. They had a very good run. Probably
I've
entirely
heard
related to me leaving.
Nah, it's not related to you leaving at all. Absolutely not.
But they certainly put a few floggings on us when I went to the Centurions. So I was a founding member of the Centurions in 2007.
Oh, wow. And how did the setup for that team and that club sort of organization go? And how was it, received by the Gridiron Association?
At that stage, ACT Gridiron was going through a resurgence. So, sort of the correlations to then and now are pretty relevant. That when I started, there were only three. I think there were 3 or 4 teams when I started. I think the Queanbeyan team had dropped out, although it may be my second year. So I think it was just the Firebirds, the Tuggeranong Tornadoes, and the Astros. My last season, and then all of a sudden the Centurions came in along with the Gladiators. Came in at the same time, 2007, and then the Wildcats, Gungahlin Wildcats, who were the prior Gungahlin club,
the predecessor to the Wolves,
yeah, correct. Came in, I think, the following year or a year or two later.
Okay.
So
it really bolstered it to 7 clubs, more or less. That would have been great.
Yeah, I think 6 was the height. Because I think just clubs sort of came and go, and they had a good period there where there was between sort of 5 to 6 teams, and the last couple of seasons it's dropped off, and hoping that with the Wolves joining that we pick it up again.
Well, I mean, so far, the Wolves have picked up, so it kind of helps you guys not have to do, a 5-game series against the Gladiators. There's a bit more competition, especially with the Wolves and how their juniors went in their first game last week. Is that a bit of, something that you're taking on board for maybe the seniors game coming up tomorrow?
I don't think we're ever going to take anyone lightly, but, certainly it shows that they're going to be well drilled and know what they're doing when they come out on the field. And we already know that they have really good players
absolutely.
Who we've seen previously in other clubs throughout the years.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not going to take them lightly. But having said that, they've got to reach our standard.
Exactly, they've got to earn. They've got to exactly.
Correct.
They've got to earn.
So until that happens, it's all talk, and we're all, it's all very exciting.
Well, we'll find out tomorrow, won't we?
Yeah, I'm certainly hoping for a nice, easy win, but I don't think that'll be the case. I think we'll have to really fight for it.
As I said to Tyler McShane yesterday, I said, look, unfortunately, and I mean no ill will to the Gladiators, but I think it'll be the two prospects this year will be Centurions and the Wolves, and every week that either of you two, the Wolves and Centurions, play the Gladiators, it'll be a bye week for you guys, more or less, unfortunately.
The thing is with the Gladiators, it's never a bye week because they're a really physical team.
Exactly.
And the other thing with them is that they've had the junior program going for quite a while. Mm-hmm. So a lot of their senior players now are just recently graduated from juniors.
Oh, okay.
So I think it's really going to be the case this year that you're going to see all three teams really grow throughout the year.
Oh, that would be great
obviously,
to see.
Yeah. Like the Wolves obviously are going to, because they haven't actually had a hit out other than I think they had a 7-a-side scrimmage a while back, and that might have been before COVID. So I think you're going to see all three teams really grow through the season, and obviously the pressure's on us to make sure that we stay ahead of the pack.
Oh, absolutely. And that was a great euphemism because wolf pack. That's kind of great.
Quite literally.
That was really great. I love it. Now, obviously, your time at UC Firebirds came to an end, and then you went over to Centurions and started playing. But after that, you had some time in the Gold Coast, South Queensland competition with the Stingrays.
Yes.
What led you to, go pack up ship basically and head all the way up to the Gold Coast? And, were you a player coach or a coach? And if so, what got you into coaching?
Yeah. So look, to answer the last question first, I got into coaching when the Centurions started a junior program, which I think was 2008. Yep. Just as an assistant coach, while I was playing, just doing the very basics. And we had 3 really good years. I think we won 3 championships in a row, 2008 to 2010. Yeah, I had very little to do with that. It was all Pete Lilly and Alex Weston doing that.
I'm sorry, sure, the head coach, but the head coach is only as good as the assistants and vice
versa. Of course, but as a coach, I had very little idea what I was doing. And you need to be brought into coaching, the more you're exposed to it, the more you... Yeah, correct. And so I played Down Under Bowl in 2009.
Okay.
And with my youngest brother. Down Under Bowl is a competition that's held every year up in Queensland on the Gold Coast, where they get teams from America representing different states to come over and play. It's awesome, and it's
against Australian-based clubs.
Not normally, but
like an exhibition type stuff.
Yeah, and I think the earlier editions of it, I know that there have been times where they've had Queensland teams, and I know when I was up with the Stingrays, we did play an Arizona team one season. Pretty good. So, I mean, those kids are all high school age.
And they've all been playing since they were tots, sort of thing.
Correct. And that's a good time. It's like a pre-season game to get your rookies and newer players in.
Get them playing and stuff.
Yeah, but I mean, I had an awesome time Down Under Bowl. Met a couple of really good people who I've known for a long time since and keep in contact with. And that was my first time to the Gold Coast.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, wow, that's an awesome place if I could ever live there.
Yep.
And as it happened, I sort of ended up working in the Merchant Navy on oil rigs and all sorts of things, which allowed me the flexibility and sort of freedom to live wherever I wanted. So we moved up to the Gold Coast in 2010, and very as my players take the piss a lot that I always say, well, at the Stingrays. But I mean, it really is
Tyler,
true.
I don't know if you watched the Tyler McShane, but after we finished recording, he goes, I'm willing to bet you how, as in he over under 7 times he mentions his time at the Stingrays.
There you go.
But that's all about it, because you did have a very good run and successful run at the Rays.
Unbelievable. And them as a club, I believe by the time. So I think, I don't know the exact dates, but I think they won a good couple of years before I arrived. They won the entire time I was there in the men's competition, the whole 5 years I was up there.
Were you head coach, or were you offense coach or assistant, or what was your role during?
No, so I went up there to play. I was still youngish.
Still could play. The body was holding up after.
Yeah. So I was lucky enough to be in the men's team for a lot of that 2010 to 14. I was playing.
Oh, wow.
And it was just a dominant team and an unbelievable club culture. And it's really the club culture, I think, that set them apart.
Absolutely. It's always like same with like NRL and AFL. The winning teams have that winning culture and also a good structure and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and administratively, I think
exactly
as well. They really,
absolutely.
So I was part of that. I coached juniors while I was up there for the first couple of years, and then
how'd you go with that?
The juniors team was good. We had a couple of really good kids come through there, and a couple after who've gone on to play college football. And
oh wow,
which is some amazing success. And then the women's competition, the FGLQ, started I think 2012, and so I sort of was around and helping coach the women's team there, who also had really good success. All through. So I mean, it was an all-round thing, and I just I'm a sucker for gridiron, and I want to be involved however I can. So
absolutely. And what was the decision to, obviously once you'd had immense, for lack of a better term, success at the Rays as a player, as a coach, to then, for lack of a better term, with Merchant Navy, pun reference, jump ship and come back down and head back down to Canberra and join the Centurions again? Yeah.
So, I mean, that was, me and my partner started a family. In 2015, we had our first child, and
congrats!
All our families in Canberra.
Congrats!
Thanks. Well, it ruined my time on the Gold Coast, but here I am in rainy, windy weather back in Canberra, loving life. So it's all good. But we had a family, and the sensible move was to move back to Canberra with all a bit of family support.
Exactly. Yeah, and that network of support.
Yeah, and so I was lucky enough to come back to the Centurions, where I felt like I was a founding member. I, knew a lot of the club. Not now, no. Sorry.
No, that's all good. Take your time. I'll pause it. 1 second. All good. Okay, go ahead.
All right. Apologies for that.
That's all good. So
you come back very child I was talking about.
That's all good. So you come back down to Centurions in 2015. And did it feel like more like a homecoming sort of thing?
It was very different just prior to me coming back, the founder of the club, John Crispin, had passed away, unfortunately. And it was sort of at the beginning, I guess, of a transitional phase when I came back. So I came back midway through the 2016 season.
Okay.
And and then quite literally got told at the end of season meeting, "Hey, you're the new head coach."
Oh wow!
Which
how did you go?
Surprised.
How did you handle that being thrust upon you?
Well, look, to be fair, I think I was ready for it. I think all the years I'd been coaching, I'd been either an assistant or a coordinator. I coached for the Women's Sun Devils in 2016.
Yep.
At the time, I was a member of the Australian women's coaching staff. So I felt like I was ready for a larger responsibility.
Yeah.
I'd never coached men's football before. I don't even think at that stage I'd coached 11-a-side football.
Oh wow!
So there's a lot of different things to take into account going into that. But I mean, at the same time, a young fellow by the name of Richard Van Lohuizen, basically in the same breath got told that he was going to be club president.
Oh wow!
And so I think we really just set our minds to not so much of a coaching thing, but of a club thing. Where does the club go from here?
Yes, absolutely.
Because we have
a picture.
Yeah, we had a history, and the history was we were a fun team to be around, but we were always the team that finished third or fourth.
So you wanted to get that trophy, wanted the goods.
Yeah, and how do we go from there, and how do we keep that existing culture of the club, but now bring a more serious element to it? Right. And so that's what we set about trying to do. And we set ourselves a 3-year plan to win a Capital Bowl.
And did you win it within those 3 years? I'm pretty sure you did.
We did. Yep. 2019, we won against the Firebirds in a best of 5 series.
And wasn't the Firebirds your bogey team, for lack of a better term, for a bit?
We'd only beaten them once in our history prior to that season.
Wow.
So I think once in 11 or 12 years. Yeah.
And to do it in a Capital Bowl, like, deciding game as well.
Yeah.
That's
it was amazing. And to us, like, even though that was a 2-team competition, we really felt as though
it still meant the world.
And at that stage, to win a Capital Bowl, you had to beat UC.
Yeah.
And we did that. We won 4-1. So
wow,
I'm pretty happy with it.
That's a good win. That's a good win. Yeah. Far out. That's amazing. Well done. And that's big ups to you. And from what I've gathered from our conversations over the last week and a bit, the following year you took over, instead of HC, you were offensive coach. For the next year, you went back-to-back winners. I think that was against the Gladiators. How did that season go? And how did that differ against the UC Firebirds?
Very, very different. UC highly drilled. Every player knows exactly what they're doing and they're going to execute it at intensity. Mm-hmm. The Gladiators is sort of a little bit more freeform and a little bit more of you're not sure entirely what you're going to get week to week, but you know you're going to be in for a game.
Absolutely.
And that was the case last season. And we give immense props to them, because there was a long period of time where we didn't even know if we were going to have a season.
Because of COVID. And they really, absolutely.
COVID and everything else, and they really scrambled to get players. So we were appreciative to play football. Having said that, we're now 2 seasons in where we've played 9 games, because the last game against the Gladiators last year, we had, I think, 3 weekends in a row of thunderstorms.
Oh.
And we just couldn't get the game to go.
Oh,
so,
wow.
We're now at the stage where we're champing at the bit to
get in, to rip in.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And not only that, most of us have had nationals that didn't go ahead.
Oh.
So, I mean, so I was the head coach for the All-Stars men's squad for last year's nationals.
And
we did all the prep work for that. I went to Tasmania, I went to North Queensland, and had a look at everyone to meet as many people as I could, watched as much game film, and we'd selected a squad, we'd organised accommodation, and a couple of months prior to the tournament, it gets cancelled due to COVID. So, I know. Never went ahead. Then this year, Craig Wilson from Victoria, the current Outback head coach and head coach of the Victorian Eagles, reached out to try to get some games against us.
Yep.
Same thing. We had everything ready, and
then that big lockdown.
The week before they played South Australia, and then went into lockdown. It just seemed for a while as though we were destined never to play football.
As if the gridiron gods were against you. But hey, the season's kicked off. We've done 1 week and you beat the Gladiators, albeit there was 3 quarters because of a very unfortunate injury to a Gladiators player. We wish them the absolute best. But what you were talking about just before, as in trying to get players, helps me segue into Vikings. So Tomo, he couldn't make it for this interview chat, but he sent me a few questions for you. One of his questions goes in with that one, and it goes, is it hard, being in Australia and it's all about other codes, cricket, AFL, NRL, is it hard to, find players? And if so, how do you go about recruiting and finding players for seniors and juniors as a coach?
Yeah. Well, and juniors, I got very little experience with, because it seems that every year with the Centurions, we get 10 to 15 kids, and it's not quite enough to get a team going, and then they all disappear. But as far as recruiting goes, I think there's 2 parts of it. One of them is just how everyone has done it forever: go to a shopping centre or go run a Bunnings sausage sizzle. And get yourself physically out there. And we've made a large emphasis the last couple of years on social media.
Yes,
being
absolutely.
a driving
the
force.
Future.
It is, and so now, however many eyes are on you, even if they're just scrolling past, and you might be able to pick up one of the players. We still do signs on the roadways in Canberra, the Corflute signs. And we've had, every year that we've had them up, we've had at least one person just show up at training and just go, hey, I saw your sign. Yeah. And the reality is, as a seniors team, you're looking I think we're in the region of 40 registered players this year.
That's what you want, more or less. I mean, you want more, but like that's ideal, absolutely.
It is, and it's a decent size, especially after all the COVID and whatnot. But you are competing constantly with other codes and all these things. So the one thing ACT Gridiron's always tried to do is have a season that runs roughly towards the end of the rugby season prior to cricket and summer sports starting.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, doing that's helped. We have picked up a couple of guys from rugby this year just because they're at the end of their season.
That's also another, sorry to segue and interrupt, but that also segues into the next question from Tomo.
Yeah.
He asks, is it hard to get players from other codes to learn and play the rules of Gridiron and NFL? And like, do they have a hard time adjusting, like an adjustment period?
Of course. And I think a lot of the adjustment is just muscle memory.
Yeah.
So techniques for doing things are different. No matter what code you play. So really, like as a coach, your job is to muscle memory as much as you possibly can into what you want. And so for Gridiron, there's different techniques that we go through with all those things. Even things like holding, like the biggest thing is holding a football. Yeah. And I always get annoyed when I see teams posting photos of people holding the ball like a rugby ball.
Oh, that does my head too.
We're playing Gridiron. We're not, the ball shouldn't be up and down.
No.
So, but things like that, it's just we need to build it into people. And we've had 2 of our running backs have come from rugby and they've only had about 5 training sessions.
Oh, wow.
So when I see things on film that they're holding the ball like that, it's natural because they haven't had enough repetition of it yet. Of course,
yeah.
But we need to beat it out of them quick. Otherwise, they lose the ball at it when you don't need it lost.
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I'm just trying to see if there's any more questions from Tomo. Show the codes to learn NFL. And the other one was, I already asked that earlier, but I asked myself, which is what got you into coaching. So obviously the season has kicked off. The ACT Capital Bowl is what it's named and called. And you guys took on Gladiators and you're taking on the Wolves. And this year there was so much uncertainty, for lack of a better term, as to whether the season would go ahead. As a coach, and in general, being part of the community down in ACT Gridiron, what kind of effect did that have on you and the team with the uncertainty of not knowing if the season would go ahead?
Yeah, I mean, like tremendous. And we lost, not to say lost forever, but people declined playing this year because, hey, I don't, I'm going to pay all this money and I don't know if that we're going to get 2 games in before we go back into lockdown or, So, but having said that, we actively made the decision as a club, not only that, but, through All-Stars and through Monarchs, we made the decision. There's no reason we can't continue to coach online.
Absolutely.
So we did these sort of Zoom meetings or Discord sessions and we pulled up film, or we, went through playbooks and we got people to send in film and review it. Whatever we can do to continue the learning so that when we get into, like we got 3 weeks of training before the season started here, which isn't really enough time.
It's not.
But we just sort of said the full playbook's going in because we've been teaching it this entire time.
Absolutely. So at least, you've got those few months during that lockdown and stuff of, you did the Zoom training, you did the video sessions and stuff. So you literally treated it as if it was just an extended off/preseason sort of thing, would you say? Yeah. And that's been something that our club has looked and really like league-wide has looked to do is how do we engage people throughout the entire season, the entire year, apologies. Yeah. So doing things like flag football, I think we need to start running more joint camps between all the clubs. Myself and Jason Ray spoke about that last weekend. Yeah, like let's start doing these things to keep people engaged, to bring everyone's skill level up. And we've got to stop being so selfish and just looking inward at our club. It's the bigger picture. It's absolutely, like you were saying, I was actually just saying it to my partner's little sister. They were playing Mario Kart. She was like, oh, I hate that I keep losing. It's like, well, you know what? To be the best and get better, you've got to be amongst and play against the best, So with those camps that you were just saying would be a great idea. So it can get, the Centurions and the more successful sort of clubs amongst the, the teams that may need a bit of an urge to be amongst, sort of get a fresh perspective from another team sort of stuff.
Yeah. And look, at the end of the day, I think really in Australia, I think probably the biggest divide between teams is within coaching.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it's not like it's just through random luck. You don't know who's going to show up and who's going to dedicate how much. Like we put in incredible amounts of time in the off season to improve things. How do we get more out of training? Yep. Hey, there's some methods that we can use to like preseason fitness programs and things like that. How do I update my playbook? Because I don't want to run the same playbook from the 1990s. Yeah. You know, it's got to update it at times. So there's all these things, and it's a year-round thing. Gridiron Australia had been running coaching clinics and have been doing for the last couple of years, and I've been to a couple of them, and they're tremendous value, but you have to go to them. And so I think statewide we need to start thinking of that as well to bolster the coaching ranks. Because the other thing is most clubs have one or two coaches.
Yeah. They don't have a full reset. They don't have a head coach, offense and defense.
Yeah. How much one-on-one coaching do you get?
Exactly.
And like that's what's needed to bring the level of skill up. So
absolutely, not just the three, but you've also maybe quarterbacks, linemen, receivers, specific, tailor it to them. Absolutely.
We have an offensive line coach this year.
Yeah, wow.
Grant Hansen, who played for us, and likewise, same as me, came down from Queensland. Mm-hmm. Just like blessed to have him, because now our offensive line gets the benefit of one-on-one coaching for 2 training sessions a week and on game day. Mm-hmm. Whereas otherwise they'd have me yelling something at them and then they're going off to talk to another position group.
Yeah. You need a specific or dedicated coach for that positional group. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, that's honestly amazing. And speaking of, last topic I've got for you before we wrap this up is the playing group, defensive, offensive and all that. In the Centurions squad and or team, from each part, the special teams, the offense and the defense, which player from each of those, sides of the team are your personal players to watch? Who would you love to give a shout out to for their skill or their dedication from each side of the Centurions?
Yeah. Well, okay. So I don't like doing that because I think, especially on the offensive side of things, because I think we only function as a unit when we all play as a unit. So like reviewing film from last week, we've got some real strong ball carriers. Joe Tula has come to play running back for us. An amazing player who's played over in America, has done everything. And we're very lucky to have him going around. But we've Bo Kennett's been my quarterback since I came to the club. And likewise, he was going to retire, decided to come back. And now he's doing a really good job mentoring Jay Irvin, who's my quarterback.
I spoke to Bo last night just briefly on Zoom, and the selflessness of that bloke in the sense of he could have easily, after 13 years, come back and be like, no, I'm going to take the number 1 quarterback spot. But no, instead he was like, you know what? I'm not going to rob this opportunity of Jay, who's taken the time and dedication to become the QB1, and he's taken the reins of being QB2 as fill-in. And as you said, really mentor Jay into the quarterback 1 role.
Yeah, and at the same time, like I'm going to get Bo's going to get his money worth this season as well, and I'm still going to expect that high quality of play that he's given for years. But at the same time, he's got so much that he can give to Jay. And when it's a tough transition, especially at a club level, because you're not in a position to turn people away. If people want to play football, I want them to play football. Yeah. But yeah, he's done a tremendous job this year. And like Jay Irvin last week ran in the 65-yard touchdown run, threw for 2 touchdowns in his first game. Like efficient football, and yet we're still identifying, and he's still messaging me all the time. Here's ways that I can improve. Yeah. Yep. And I like that across my team. So I love my offense. I love my receivers. As I said, our offensive line played really well. We ran for 8 yards a carry last week, and we want to do more of the same this week.
Well, you want to hope so for sure.
I would. On special teams, I would have to. Brad Mathers is a special teams captain. Yep. And he's really stepped up and is very diligent in practicing his punting and kicking. And he's already surpassed me. Look, I have some kicking experience, but he's surpassed me in, as far as like his ability and his dedication to the role. that's a really important role to have. You need to have a good kicker and punter because field position's king.
Absolutely.
And look, defensively, Tyler already gave himself enough props last week. Let's face it.
Well, he got 3 interceptions.
Yeah, it's hard to
you can't deny that, unfortunately. And he would be like, "Nah, there's definitely better players than me." He's that humble.
No, he is. And look, it's the same thing with the good defense plays as a unit. And we're lucky with our scheme that we do get a lot of turnovers, and we've got a lot of people to force them. Mm-hmm. So, and we've got a lot of inexperienced people who are going to pick it up as the season goes on too. So, I think by the end of the year, there's going to be a lot of people shining on all areas for us.
Absolutely. And that about wraps up the time I have. First of all, on behalf of the Cheers Out of the Viking, I want to thank you very much for joining me and us on the podcast. And I'd love to get you on at the end of the season with, hopefully, for the Centurions' sake, another Capital Bowl trophy in the trophy cabinet for you guys.